Well, hello! Welcome to Drawing with Fire. I am Valerie, your neighborhood pyrography artist, your home of burning and learning, and I'm joined with hubby.
Hubcap.
And we are continuing the wings from last night. So I figured we did a bit on these that we'll look at this one down here. Hey, Spence, Amy, Sheila, Joshua. So we're going to get started with that. Remember, this is 8x10 poplar. I'm still trying to get used to burning on it because I've never burned on it. And sometimes it takes a little while. Totally fine.
Sheila says Greg says to say hi. He's at work.
They're going to do
it's
it.
Happening.
Every time. Every time. They're going to get me now. Every time. We had Greg last night. We got Sheila today. So I'm going to zoom in. And if anybody had any questions from last night's live, definitely pop it in the chat. That way it's fresh and we can get right into it. There we go. My angle's off a little bit, but you can see. All right, so I'm going to start. I have my color photo right here so that I can see some areas better. We're going to start here in the corner, but like I did last night, what we need to do for this poplar is I need to erase lines. This, even though it's wax-free graphite paper, it's still, the poplar really took it. It just took it. So we need to lighten that up before we start burning. That way when we go to wipe down and do any more erasing, it's easier. So we'll get that off. And also, if you are in group, I posted a new question for you guys starting with July's community projects. So if you could please let me know.
What was the question?
I asked if they wanted to start choosing the photos instead of me.
Oh.
And have the group vote on it. That way it doesn't feel like I'm always telling them what we're going to do. I'd like them to have some input. More input than what they already have. So, alrighty. We are going to get started underneath here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to the no. What am I doing? I'm doing this. There we go. Sepia color. And we are going to start getting some things in there. I'm at little above 2, like barely. And that's only because poplar is burning so dark. I like heat. And we're going to drag down with the grain.
It's looking really good.
And I'm more flat than using the tip. And that's going to help. Now remember, all wood burns differently. Even if you're burning on the same kind of wood that you always burn on, it is always going to burn differently. So
it's not you. It's
me. Yeah, that doesn't feel very...
No, because I was sitting down for a while and I got up, moved around, and my body wants to stretch and yawn.
So you should be awake.
Well, see, I didn't have my stretch and yawns because I was rushing to get here.
From the living room, mind you. That's only
traffic.
Josh knows how far the living room is away from the studio. Not very far. Less than 50 steps. All right, so I'm moving quicker so that it's a lighter burn and just trying to blend it in. And looking at the sepia, we have this whole area that needs to burn darker. So I'm going to touch down in the dark part where I've already burned. Slow down just a little bit. Now this is flat. I've got the pen completely flat on the board. And I'm dragging down with the grain. And that's how I'm getting a little bit more even burn. And if I want it darker, I can either really slow down the pen until it's as much heat as the wood's going to take, and then I'm going to have to bump up the heat, or I can just bump up the heat and move quicker.
But I guess you have to know what you're doing if you're going to bump up the heat because it's less margin for her because it burns quicker?
For poplar, yeah. I'm having to figure all that out.
So I always hear you say drag down. Do you ever push up?
No. Well, as in push up, no. For this particular stroke, I might sometimes pull up if I'm on the side, but to push up with this, it feels awkward and it hits the wood wrong. So, and if you've got a weaker tip, it could break it. Oh. We don't want to break tips. So this right here is actually dark. So let's go ahead and get that in. So this is now just the tip, and a slower stroke across the grain is what's making it darker. I haven't changed the heat setting. I've just altered how fast the pin's moving and what part of the pin is touching the wood. All a part of getting to know your burner. If you're completely new and just got a new burner, I would test out all your tips that you chose on a couple of different pieces, types of wood, poplar, basswood, birch, just so you can see what those tips do on each kind of wood, the different strokes that you can get, and that will help you get more comfortable with your burner. There you go. We got some darks under here because our light is shining down mostly. You're trying hard not to do it again, aren't you? Let's see here. See, I had a hard time with this part. This is a really light nail, and it took me, like as in fingernail, right here. But it really blends into the background, even on the sepia, and I had a hard time discerning that. And this is definitely a good example of why you want the best reference photo you can get so that you have those clear details to decide what you're going to do. What I'm going to do is I am going to actually leave this until I put in the mountain behind it. And then I can shape it and whatnot. But I'm just going to put the dark here. So I have it, so when I go to erase the graphite, I'm not losing it.
So they could put the dragon anywhere, though.
Oh yeah, they can do just the dragon. They don't have to do the background at all.
They could put the dragon on top of like the Chrysler building or something.
Well, if they're that daring. I don't know how the owner of the Chrysler building would feel about it, but sure.
He doesn't have a choice.
Yes.
It's a dragon.
Yes, but I didn't cut it out from the background, but you could cut it out from the background and put just the dragon on whatever background you wanted to. I would say if you want to do that, maybe do the dragon first with the group and get an idea of how everything is, and then go off on your own and have fun with that.
Gonzo's here.
Hey, Gonzo. Don't have any chickens for you. Or cannon. I'm just dragging down, and the reason you're hearing the wood creak, and that's because it's cupped, meaning it's bowed. You can't really tell. I'm not gonna be able to pull it off. Yes, you can tell.
Well, it's more of a distance thing. Well,
if I do this, you can tell.
You know what? Tilt it up this way.
I have to move the camera, and I don't want to move.
No, you don't have to tilt up the camera. Just tilt it up. No, move it up.
Well, no, right there you can see it.
There. That's all I was getting at.
So
you can see the bow.
Yeah, you can see the bow.
But if you put the bottom edge right there, you can see it.
Oh, like this?
Yeah, and then, yes.
Yes, you can see the bow. An iron with a very more dry than damp cloth, and you iron the opposite of the cup in order to get it out. But you have to be very careful because what you're doing is you're adding moisture to the wood, and then it dries, and that is what causes bowing or straightening it out. So for this, because it cups, the U goes this way, I would have to put the very slightly damp, I would not go too damp, towel on the board on this side, and then on high heat, very quickly, you iron over the area. It dries the towel like that, pushing the moisture into the wood, and that heat kind of steams the wood to straighten out. Now you can overdo it and then cup the other way, and then you got to flip it over and you got to do it again and keep going back and forth So you have to be really careful with that. But you can fix cupping. I actually had an issue with cupping on my special piece, and I had to do that. And unfortunately, I had to do it while I'd already started burning. The pattern was on, and I'd already started burning. And yeah, I would recommend doing it before you sand.
So 2 things.
Mm-hmm.
We just had like a second of buffering and it went away. And then Gonzo said he's looking at the piece because he missed Wednesday's show and says it's coming along so well.
Oh, thank you.
Oh.
Oh, what?
It wasn't on Wednesday. It was yesterday.
It was last night. Last night. All right, let's undercut. So I'm going to slow down, use more angle. So I know I've got my pen like this, so I'm twisting just slightly and using more of the edge of the pen. What this does is it still puts heat on the rest of the tip that's hovering over the board, but is not as much. And it gives me a little bit more control over the shadow underneath. Sorry, brain just like stopped. Don't know why. Just stopped. Now I do have I have been trying to stay away from doing any of the stones. But we have some dark stones right here that will actually help discern the wing better. So I'm going to go ahead and just quickly lay those in. I'm not being too careful right now. I can always tighten them up later. I just want to get them in there so that I know that's what that is, because we also have a dark line here, and then it goes up into, but we're not going to go there yet. Let's get this in there. All right, so we know this is just the wing. We also have rock back here, and the wing and the stone are kind of the similar tonal values right here. So what we can do is put this shadow in, because the wing is going to have shadows from different things hitting it, meaning the stone have the lights hitting it if it was wounded, if it's got thicker back-like wings there. So we need to remember, yes. Let's go ahead and get that in there. That way we don't forget about it, and we can kind of keep our brain as, understanding what's what. This is also a fold. That's another reason it's dark. It looks like it's folded just slightly where we get an edge. And I'm going to leave an edge. Let's see here. It goes over, curls. Right now I'm just freehanding it because I did not draw it on. It was one last thing for me to erase later. I'm just going to freehand it in because luckily it's a shadow. If it's slightly off, who's going to know? Not a big deal. Could also be part of a wing tear. All right. Now I can drag down. We do have a little hole, so let's go ahead and tap that in. All right. Now I can burn up against it and know that it's there. I've left enough of a line where the graphite is for a highlight, kind of. So when I go to put this rock in and erase the line, there'll be a bit of a highlight, and then I can adjust it. So no worries there. With the pin flat, I'm dragging across. It's a little slightly different tonal burn. Sometimes the wood will do that. It'll change what color it's burning based on the grain it's hitting and the heat level. So, and if you notice, that got hotter going or darker going against the grain or across it. So we get that in there. I actually need to hold this up for a second. Angle it. Now I'm using the left side all of it, not just the tip, and dragging across. Let's see here. We got shadow here. Tap that in so I don't lose it. It goes up, goes back down. We have, it's a dark nail, but it's not black, so I'm just going to do that. And now we can drag across carefully. Though if this looks a little rough, I think it gives more of the right feeling, because it is a rough area on the wing. And then what we can do is tap just the tip, the 18S, just tap, because what we have here is texture. It almost acts more like a bone, like this. Don't connect them all, just kind of tap them in. We're giving the illusion that we have some separation in between without being very obvious about it. Because when somebody looks at it from a distance, what they're going to see is this texture. It's going to look like it's all one piece together. And it gets darker. And I'm not being very careful with this. And drag across just in the area. And then we do have a bit of shadow here, so let's get that in there. Dragging down full base of the tip. Get some of that in here. And then, because this is lighter, so we have to be careful of that. I was hoping I could do this with just one pen, but it'll just be easier and quicker in this case. My special project, I only used 2 main pens. I was able to get it all burned. So we got some dark in here. I could even go back later with the 9M and kind of detail this area out, so I'm not going to stress about it. And we also have our shadow under here. So I'm going to tip the board. See, I can really feel the cupping right here now. But once I frame it, it'll be gone. So try not to stress about it. Full foot, dragging slower, though I'm kind of angled a little bit towards the line that I'm burning next to. It won't look like an outline, but it'll definitely look like more 3D, and that's what I'm going for. And then our line gets thinner. So let's get that in there. Ready? And then again, we still have the tapping texture right here. You could use a ball tip for any of this. You could use, let's see here, I'm trying to think of the different tips, because not everybody has the same tips that I do. So, ball tip, spear shader, writing tip. If you're using a craft burner, you could use the kind of spade shaped tip, shader tip, that gives you a tip to use that to tap in, and then you've got flatness with the base of that tip. But remember, it's going to burn differently than a wire tip. So if it looks slightly different, totally okay. Totally okay. Alright, so we got some wing. Got a bit of wing going on now. Here's some more of this. Do we have any questions?
Nope, not so far.
No questions?
Nope, we're just watching, and
looks like the chat went dead.
well, look, Gonzo and Spence were talking about chickens. But that's it.
Well, chickens were Gonzo's best friend. That's why I'm making chickens. Alright, so let's see here. Trying to find another area, because once we have this blocked in, it'll be so much easier. I'm going to go ahead and head down to, I don't know if they would be considered claws on the wings or what they are. So I'm using the tip and dragging down, and then I'm going to use the tip across the grain, because what we see here is a lack of connection between, I don't know if they're like similar to vertebrae in the wing. We're not seeing everything. It's not all connected. Some are bigger than others. And remember, we can always go back in and detail them out more. It's just so we know where this part of the wing is. Go across a little bit, and we do get a little thicker up here. So let's get that thicker in. And this is why I didn't want to draw solid lines on the reference or on the pattern for this, so that you can put them in the way you want them.
Spence says, Val, no one has as many tips as you, except Pearl.
Okay, but in all fairness, I test them all so you guys, because I get people asking, what about this tip? What about this tip? And if I don't have it, it's kind of hard for me to give an answer. But yes, you're right. And you don't need all these tips. I'm just trying to help with telling you if you got this tip, it'll work too. Alright, last claw on this wing. Now this one is more of an undercut. Well, no, actually this is more dark on the actual bony surface. I don't know what it'd be called. You don't know bird name parts. So we're just gonna drag those in. Remember, when we put in the fog, when we put in the base of the mountain, this is really going to pop out, but we don't want to go too dark because down here we have those silhouetted trees. And I don't normally like silhouettes, but I think this will really look good. I don't know why I said it that way. Now we can put a little bit in. Alrighty, so this is going to go darker. We know that. This is going to need to go darker. In fact, I could probably, without screwing up, put the pin flat and drag across. Nope, it's not going to let me because the heat from burning raises the grain, and sometimes that grain, it won't burn smoothly like what I just tried to do. So now I got to try to cover it up. Hide it. This goes lighter as we go further down, but our darkest is right here, which we actually kind of lose the foot, which I think is totally fine. Blend it in. The foot was the 2 feet were really hard for me to try to get as clear in the pattern for you guys as I could.
So Will is here.
Hey, Will.
He says, jumping in between conference calls. Gonzo says, well, if the dragon wing works on the same principle as a bat wing, I think they would most definitely be claws or nails.
That's true. And these look like bat wings.
And Joshua says, let's get this party started.
I thought we already had. Well, he's almost 16. We're old. We are old. Alright, so this, we have a bit of a fold here. So let's go ahead and get that in. In fact, I can scan upside down and try to go right where the graphite is, because that's our darkest area. And I'm going to drag down from it. Though I guess technically would be up, but since I flipped the board, it is down. Let's get that in there. I'm not sure how I feel about this poplar yet. Which kind of sucks because I bought more of it before we started doing this. I was hoping it would be good for dark backgrounds, but based on How it's burning right now, I don't know. Have to give it a shot. All right, we got the base of the swing down here at the bottom end. Now we have texture down in this area. All right, so now we know where that's at. And I'm not sure that I like the color of the burn. I'm still trying to decide.
So Will has decided he will continue to work on the basswood version.
Oh, good.
And currently do one on birch.
Sure.
Because I think last night he was talking about that he was
he didn't like
ceasing work on basswood. Mm-hmm. So
I think it's good. I think if you can stick with it, then you'll learn the differences between the two different woods and how they burn differently. It can be hard if you're only learning on one type of wood. And you're learning and you're learning and you're learning, and then you decide to try something else. It can definitely throw you off because you think you're doing something wrong and you're not. It's just different wood burn differently. So it's not you, it's the wood. It's the wood. So I definitely think you should continue with it just so you can learn those differences. You've already got it started, you know. What's it gonna hurt to finish it?
He says he did a practice dragon head, I guess, on a piece of birch last night, and it's working much better. He says, and Spence says, I like birch.
There are definitely things that I like birch better for, but I found basswood gives me a smoother dark background. So it's definitely something to look at when you go to decide on a piece of wood for a project. What are the main things you want for that project? And it's hard when you get used to one thing and then you switch over and you're like, I'm doing it wrong. But it's not that you're doing it wrong. You need to find those nuances. Let's see here. Okay, so this side is darker here. It's darker here. We got some splotchy darker here. This is our lightest area. And this goes down into it. Alrighty. I'm just trying to get my bearings. And I have not adjusted my heat. I'm still at 2 with the spear shader.
Will says, yeah, part of the problem is patience.
Yes, yes. And you always have to remember, a piece is going to stay in the ugly stage for longer than it's in the pretty stage. Because one day, it's going to be ugly, 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 and you're just going to keep going, 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 and then one day it's not ugly anymore. And you're like, oh.
I always have to remind myself of that.
I do too.
Because, we're buffering. Just started.
Yep.
Okay, it's done.
All right.
Yeah. We were talking about, oh God, it's buffering again.
We're at half an hour. Though we were 5 minutes late.
I'm waiting to see if it's buffering again, but yep, a little bit.
I'm gonna have to call the company and get this fixed for now. We didn't have this problem last night, did we?
No. You know what? It's got to be a systemic problem, not necessarily with our local wiring. I think there's so much demand because remember last night we didn't have any buffering.
Yeah.
And
it could be partially YouTube, yeah.
Well, I think there's so much traffic. Well, I'm not saying necessarily YouTube, but you know, our local provider may have
yeah, but we're paying good money
because this is a local provider.
No, so. they're national.
Are they?
Mm-hmm. Mm. We just happen to have a local office.
So Gonzo has an unrelated question.
Mm-hmm.
He says, "I'm going to start a portrait of my nephew, 5-month-old.
Okay.
So no major facial definition.
Yes, that's true.
It's buffering. Do you have any hints and tips as to where to start or not start?
If you look in the
buffering. Sorry.
I get
okay. It seems to be okay now.
You go to the playlist for portraits. I have different areas of the face that I did that include children and babies, so you can talk about that. All right. Yeah, probably a Zoom. Buttheads. Alrighty.
Oh, yeah.
Back this out. Look, we're starting to get a dragon. A dragon's starting to be born. Look at that.
What I was going to say about the ugly stage is that that's artistically Like every artist goes through that.
Oh yeah.
There's no artist. If they tell you differently, they're lying.
They're lying to you.
Even like Da Vinci.
There's always
he's like, oh, Mamma Mia, this lady, she's ugly right now. I just gotta push her through it.
It says we're buffering. Are you buffering?
No.
Okay. All right. So next week, what do you guys want to work on? Do you want the mountains, or do you want to work on the trees and fog, or the stone?
I'm just gonna make a sign. And it's like buffering.
Maybe, but then you'll have to hold it where I can see you moving. Or the stone, because we have some really dark darks here. That's gonna help.
Buffering.